All right, manage.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Fantastic.
Because obviously it goes out on a podcast, I'll just describe to the listeners. We've got Paul Stansfield on. There's a massive big light above his head. Thankfully, he's got a cap on. But he's got the biggest face mask in the world. COVID-19 can transfer between various...
Over Zoom.
Great luck, Stanley. Great luck. How you doing?
All right, Paul?
Yeah, good. Struggling to get an haircut, Jez, but you know how it is.
Oh, you are, I am. All right. I thought you'd shave yours.
No, got barbers.
Has it permed?
Okay. Has it permed?
Streaks.
We're really enjoying it because it's almost replacing being stood at the end of the bar at 10:30 on a Sunday night telling the same stories we told the week before.
Gordon, send Morehouse to save the house. Come on, the house!
Hello and welcome to podcast number 8 of Housecast. It's good to be with you again. We're very excited to have tonight's guest. We've got the usual regulars in tonight with our 2005 championship winning captain Joe Beneducci and our most successful bowler of the modern era, the legend that is Jez Hope. How's everybody getting on? Anything to update us on, anybody?
Go on, Duke, you go first.
No, I haven't been up to much, Joe, since we last spoke. I've tried a new smoothie recipe.
Oh, yeah?
I got it off Neil Diamond.
All right.
It's got swede, carrot, lime in it. But that's it, really.
Joe Martin, I've started getting a load of pallets in. I'm taking them to bits now and making some bird nests and bird tables and things like that. I've got a dartboard today, so I'm playing a bit of darts. Other than that, very much the same. Very much the same, thank you.
Excellent. I'm hosting the podcast tonight as Joe Martin, current wicket keeper and, of a fashion, I guess. Right, so we'll get on to our guest now. So our guest this evening is someone who's represented the club in many different roles, whether that was as a player, the second team captain, the first team manager during the most successful period, or more recently being Charlie's second in command when building the bonfire. Paul Stansfield, welcome to Housecast.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you getting on in the lockdown?
Like I said earlier, struggling to get an haircut, Joe. Hey, Joe, you okay?
I'm all right, mate, yeah.
Looks like supermarkets are still open. Looking at Joe's face, fill that screen, doesn't it?
Come on, Joe, get on with it.
Excellent, right. So Paul, we'll start with how you became involved at the club, kind of what age you started and the kind of time period we're talking about. So the floor is yours to begin with.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I've only listened to a couple of these so far, so I don't really know what you expect, but does it go along the lines of Stan's where it's he sort of said that any juniors listening, we did balloon about. Stan was probably one of the worst culprits. He was often late, and when he faced Roger Harper, it was like watching a tortoise on sleeping tablets.
Good description. Good descriptions.
He did ask
Anyone
you
who
when
were
you...
there will just about be waking up.
It's funny as that, Paul, but he did actually ask you how you arrived at the club. But can you tell us, like, your first time?
Well, my mum gave birth to me. But honestly, baby in arms at the club. I mean, I was born in September, so my first season, obviously can't remember it, but it'll have been sort of 1974. You know, I've been...
How many wickets did you get that year, Jez?
18.
We're Blazer's testimonial. I remember that's what sticks in the mind. But yeah, so I basically from a baby and sort of like my memories sort of start there really, from being sort of 5-6 years old and going through the Bill Holt era, Reg Wardle, one of the greatest people at Lowerhouse Cricket Club, Rusty, you know, Jez and people like that who helped me along.
Cracking. So when did you start actually playing cricket? Maybe in junior teams or when you made, you know, whatever debut, I guess.
Well, I mean, my first memory actually was sort of before that of the club. Jez might remember this. There were a large event at the club. It had been late 70s, and they had a marquee on the outfield. I don't know if you can remember, Jez.
Yeah, I think so.
I've mentioned it to Stan. Stan can remember what the event were. I can't remember what it were. The event must have passed. I mean, I was 5 years old, but it's obvious why it sticks in my memory. I went down on the Saturday and Sunday morning. My granddad and my dad were committee men. I mean, obviously, not putting his husband on it, but anyone who knows me and Matthew knows that sort of his dad died when we were very young. But so my dad was still alive. So it'd been about 1979, this, and they'd had this event at the club, and there was a marquee up on the outfield. And on the day after the event, went down with my dad and my granddad to take this marquee down. And as a 5-year-old, I was playing on the outfield. As we were taking the marquee down, one of the guys let go of one of the scaffolding poles, 15-foot scaffolding pole, and it fell down, sort of timber effect, and hit me flush on the head. So bounced back up off my head, come back down and hit me again on the head. So this thing's like, at this point, hammering me into the ground like a nail, and someone comes and rescues me. So I can't remember who, and then they whisked me off to the clubhouse, but I was still conscious but screaming. Just of them days, like, so I was sort of given an out-of-date bag of crisps and told to stop being so fucking soft by Jack Hayes. And that, that is my genuine first memory of Lowerhouse Cricket Club.
So come and join us. Stand west in tight pants. Was the club still gleaming? Years without a club. Never stopped us dreaming.
Welcome to Stories with Stan.
Dear Diary, 1993, first game of the season versus Church. Match abandoned by 2:30. Ground under a sea of water. Cards begun and abandoned by 4:30. Table under a sea of ale. Played cards with Roger Bromley as partner against Peter Gayblade and Rusty. We're playing dumb. I played crap. Little did I realise that I would continue this form into the season with the bat. Mick Ellis had a good fundraising scheme under his belt, the Lowerhouse Rip-Off Enterprises production. This involved running a sweep in the Villa versus City and Arsenal versus Sheffield Wednesday game. First player to score. I drew the reserve goalkeeper in each team. Lucky Heaton rides again. I don't know why, I just don't pay my wage direct into Lowerhouse Cricket Club. Church game hastily rearranged. High hopes of beating Church. Matthews looked overweight, and anybody who thinks he has to impress by eating his polystyrene pie tray before the game must be doubtful, but that's what he did. Anyway, they batted first, and debut boy Paul Webb, 6 foot tall, 16 stone, Fred Scuttle look-alike for those that can't remember him, and slimline debutant in those days, Matt Hope, bowled well. This wasn't Matt's first game, but it was his first game as a slimster. 134 didn't seem a lot to get with our now formidable batting lineup. Our early thoughts about Matthews proved incorrect. Of the 3 balls I faced, the first one I drove with my thumb to first slip. The second one whizzed embarrassingly past without me moving. And the third one ate through my guard like a polystyrene pie tray. There can be no more depressing feeling than letting the side down. Having played for 24 years, you would have thought that I would be used to it by now, but I'm not. We suffered badly and we're all out for 84. A couple of bright spots. Matt Hope batted and bowled well. He was hit on the forehead from a Matthews lifter, and the game was held up for a few minutes whilst the ball received treatment. Paul Webb also bowled well. And last but not least, veteran-looking Chris Scott defied most cricket pundits' opinions by putting a useful 17 on, including a straight 6. This is only the second 6 that Chris has ever hit, and if he talks about it as long as the first 6, it should see him through to the next century. For those that don't know, Chris's other 6 was in 1985, when he hit Eric Simmons, the professional for Nelson, over point for 6, into the embankment at Nelson, or as Scotty tells it, over the motorway. This was a very disappointing start. We are a much better batting side than this.
2 heavy blows to the head as a 5-year-old. I mean, that explains a lot, doesn't it, really?
If I hadn't been dragged away, like I said, I'd been hammered into the ground like a nail, I think, by that beam.
Cracker, that's funny that you remember that, Stanley. And like you say, it's probably typical of things that happen at Lowerhouse. And
were they not now?
No.
For any parents or juniors who might be listening.
Yeah, free Jules the Creek. But yeah, remember your granddad, and yeah, I mean, I can't remember what that occasion was, but I can see that it was there. I remember it being there. No, it's great memories, and you were only 5 then, Stanley.
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah.
What was it, Paul? What was the event? Can you remember? Did you say Stan could remember it?
I've asked Stan knows that tell about that scaffolding pole landing on my head, and Stan can remember what the event was. It was late 70s, but I can't honestly. He's told me, but I can't remember. But obviously, I can remember being smashed on the head by a scaffolding post.
So, what was your first cricketing memory, Stanley?
First cricketing memory? Well, Bill Holt, Wednesday nights. Wednesday night training sessions with Bill Holt. And my granddad used to take me to them. And, you go along, and Bill was like the old-fashioned cricket coach, pair of khaki pants on, Lancashire sweater. He'd have a gang of 7 and 8-year-olds around him, and he'd be trying to tell us how to play cricket. And I probably can't remember fully, but like most kids, I'd have my bat and ball, and then you'd have to go and stand in field. But one session that we had with Bill, it'll be with me for the rest of my life. It's etched on my brain. You'd never forget it if it happened to you. But Bill had it. I'd have my bat and ball, and then like most 7 or 8-year-olds, I got a bit fed up. Your turn to go and field. And it is at that age, it's boring, it's fielding. So you stood at fielding, start doing a few cartwheels, a bit of toppling, and start rolling up and down slope. Obviously, it's slope on field, and Bill, to be fair to him, he just used to turn a blind eye to these things. He was too busy showing people how to hold a bat and things like that. And fielders, everyone were at it basically. But then at 7:45, Bill used to get everyone to stand round him, and you'd stand in this big circle. Well, Bill had sort of, what have we learnt tonight, kids? And it'd do a forward defensive and show, and talk us through that. And then the kid next to me, this particular night, started sniffing, like making like a sniffing noise. I was like, what's he doing? And then he says to me, what's that in your ear? And I'd rolled through biggest pile of dog shit. Obviously didn't know. And this dog shit was obviously matted in the air. That's what this kid was sniffing. Now, what obviously, so it's 100% true. And obviously, kids are merciless bastards at the best of times, aren't they? And I were known as shithead. Seriously, the other kids called me shithead for a good while. After that, it was just something you sort of learn to live with until something happened to someone else. But it was pretty harsh for a few weeks down there after that happened.
So your nickname was Shithead for the first couple of weeks?
Yeah. Amongst Bill Holt's coaching, the kids who were coaching in them days, Shithead.
Paul, were there any other names that we might know in that group of kids or not?
Danny Holding, maybe.
All right, yeah, okay, yeah.
Christian Duckworth, he's granddad with a guy called Len Graham, who Jez will know.
Yeah.
Christian Duckworth were involved. A lad called John Nuttall, who played down there for a little bit as a junior. But none that really spring to mind.
No.
Other than them three, really.
No, just trying to think of any of the others, because there's
a photo knocking about somewhere. We're all on it, and Evan Gray's there. So whatever year Evan Gray were, it'll have been around that time.
But that bit older, weren't you, than Matt and Frock and the others?
They were always Matt, Ryan, Simon were like 2 years above me at school. So when I was a third year, they'd have been like a fifth year at our school. Proc's
82-83.
Proc's a little bit older than the rest of us.
Yeah.
82-83, Stanley and Jez.
Right.
Yeah. I say I've seen a photo knocking about. I think Anne Cochrane's got it, and Neil McSweeney might have been there.
We're going to move on to senior cricket now, Stanley, unless you've got some stories about junior cricket that you want to discuss.
Just one with Reg Wardle, really. Is that all right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we talked about Bill Holt, and I don't think Reg and Bill actually worked together at the time. I think Bill did like kiddie coaching, and Reg picked the junior teams. Honestly, I was 11. It was a bit of a surprise. It was during school holidays. I got a phone call to say, can you play for under 13s? I'd have been 10, I think. Can you play for under 13s at Salisbury tomorrow night? So obviously, I had a bat, some pads, and some gloves, but I needed whites. I didn't have whites because I didn't have any spikes, and just little things like that. So I told my mum what I needed. I said, Reg Wardle wants me to play for under 13s. I'll need some whites, spikes, and I'll need a box because we'll be playing me an elbow, playing me a corky, mum. So I'll need a box. So mum says, all right. It was school order, so I must have been playing 8. And I got in about 4:30. My granddad would pick me up at 5 o'clock to take me over to Salisbury. Big dozen little dozen. I got in and my kit was sort of laid out upstairs. And it sounds a bit dapper. It was pretty normal in them days. It was like a white school shirt, a pair of bleached jeans, a pair of white Simod pumps as trainers. But that, made up whites, and I wouldn't have been the only kid like that. But next to it, there was an ice cream tub. I thought. So I shouted to my mum. I says, "Mum, what's this ice cream tub next to me? What do I need?" She said, "It's that box you needed." So I thought, Jesus Christ, so I'm known as shithead, and what they're going to think when I start shoving that down my kecks before I go out to bat, an ice cream tub.
And more importantly, Stanley, what if the ball had hit you on it?
So I thought, well, I can't take that. So my first ever knock for Lowerhouse Number, basically when my bat in front of me bollocks. Might explain why batting went safe from then on.
So, Stanley, you're obviously pretty good as a junior, and you managed to get into the third team. We actually have a scorecard of your first 13 game, or the first 13 game that we've got on record.
That was 1987. It's
yeah,
on
Accrington. Yeah, it is. That's what we're looking at now. Yeah.
Jesuit captain.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we were talking about this card during the week. Blaise played. He'd have been 20 at that stage, playing at third 11.
You might not remember. It were actually Burnley Holidays. The reason it weren't a third team. If you look at it, like likes of Mick Higgin and Matt aren't there. It was a team that were thrown together.
Right.
Like Burnley Holidays were on, and that's why I played. I think I played 2 games, 3 games at most, one after other. Then did play again for first till sort of 2 years later. You
batted at 6, but didn't bowl.
Yeah, I used to do all right with batting under 13s at the time. Could hold me on.
And opening the batting for us that day was Shane Higgins.
Yeah.
Shane's been in touch. He's a podcast fan. For those that don't know, Shane lives in Minneapolis, but he's a big podcast fan. He listens to us and he's been in touch. So hello, Shane, if you're listening.
Yeah, giving us feedback there, Shane. I do remember that game, Stanley. And for some reason, I can't remember some of the games that I played in 2004, but I remember that being right up the top end of the square at Acke.
Yeah.
And having to chase one right to the other side. It would have really good memory, good game, I remember, because
you tell people when you go to Accrington now, they wrote the boundary off now. They never used to wrote that boundary off, did they? It used to be enormous, didn't it, from left to right, Accrington. Yeah. So enormous ground, and it's only sort of recently we've started doing that, last sort of 9 or 10 years.
So how long do you think you played in the third team for, Stanley?
Well, I played about 1989. To be fair, I didn't do anything of note in third team. I used to think I was better than some players that got a chance, but there were sort of reasons for that. These people are friends, and I still talk to them now. But sort of, I always felt I was better than say Danny Oldham, but because Brian Holmes was captain and Lofty was first team captain, Danny always used to get a bat and a ball before me. So there were people, and there were people there. I thought, well, I'm sort of better than him, but I never seemed to get to do. All of a sudden, people like Marcus G left, and a few others, and I sort of went. We ain't actually really doing anything in thirds. I found myself in seconds. Probably not good enough, really, but we just needed players. I finished 1990 in second team. A guy called a good mate of mine, Simon Crossley. We both sort of managed to stay in at the beginning of 1991. And we had a game at the beginning of 1991 against Churchholm, and a guy called Tommy George.
I remember him.
Absolutely smashed me all over the place. I thought, is this the game for me? Then the week after, the very next week, encouraged by Roger Bromley, who were brilliant with me all the way through. Encouraged by Roger Bromley, we went to Ramsbottom. We didn't have any. We didn't. The bowlers out. either people were away or people missing for first team, people go. And I actually went from that pacing of Tommy George to bowling 23 overs from one end at Ramsbottom with Rusty as captain, and it sort of took off from there for me, really. From that one game, I just became an established second team bowler, you know, and ended up having a decent season.
How old you been then, Stanley? Approximately?
17.
Right.
17. And obviously Keith Rusty Fairclough was your second team captain at that point, as you just said.
Yeah.
Perhaps one of my favourite people in the world, Keith. Before the lockdown, I used to go and have a chat with him on most mornings just to see how he was getting on and whatever. But what was it like playing under Keith?
I mean, honestly, I absolutely love Rusty. And you know, you have people who sort of you learn the game off, and you get better off. You know, you have good captains. You know, Gary Moorhouse. You know, I don't think anyone will ever beat him as a captain at Lowerhouse. And you know, one of my best mates, Charlie's been a more successful captain. But Gary, with the tools he had to work with, were phenomenal. But Rusty, in terms of me personally, the amount of encouragement he gave me to sort of to develop and get better were fantastic. And the other person who I don't think I've told many people this, but I used to get a lot of encouragement off Keith Hudson, God bless him, Lindsay's dad.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
He did a lot to help me, you know, because we were next door neighbours, and obviously, you know, we were brought up there to dad, really, me and Matthew. So, and Keith were always behind us, always encouraging, always offering, used to come and watch. You know, he pushed me as well. But you know, Rusty and Keith. But I mean, Rusty, for those who know him, I mean, he has his ways, and that second team in them days, I mean, he had his hands full with not just obviously the characters in there. You know, there was sort of Proc, Ryan, Matt, Simon, myself, you know, and others. But Rusty, he had to do absolutely everything, because that was the way of the club in them days. And you know, not only were they picking the team, we were sorting the travel out, the scores. He sometimes had to change batting order so he could make the tees, did Rusty. You know, and that's how it were. But every now and then, it just used to explode. If you know Rusty, and he even does it today, when he's praising you or he's bollocking you, he always puts an emphasis on the last word. So it's always like, well done, son. Or when you say it, you sort of realise he does it, don't you? Yeah. And you know, and if it were a bollocking, it were like, listen, you. You know, emphasis would be on the you. And obviously, amongst others, you know, I was always one of his main targets. But you know, to be fair, I got more well done sons off him than bollockings. But we used to have some classic run-ins, and one of them were playing Rishton seconds at home. They had a guy playing for him called Barry Hill. This guy, I didn't really know him then, but apparently through the 70s and 80s, he was one of the league's top all-rounders, like Lancashire League top amateur all-rounder, this Barry Hill. And this particular day, he were winning Rishton game. And I'd already bowled, I'd opened bowling, but he brought me back on, did Rusty. And he says to me, I need you to bowl outside Barry Hill's off stump. I says, right, fair enough. So he gives me the ball, and I'm bowling from to car park end. And the ball's at Barry Hill, and about fifth ball over, I bowled him round his legs. And it were a game clincher. I bowled him round his legs, and it was one of them, you knew they didn't have enough left. If they were going to win it, Barry Hill were going to win it. So we're all in huddle, and Rusty, which sort of last to appear in huddle, and like he does, he pushes his glasses back up his nose, and he says to me, I'm taking you off. He said, I'm putting Derek on Derek Liner. I says, why? He said, because I told you to bowl outside his fucking off stump. And he genuinely, it must have just been that way at that moment, and he genuinely took me off and put somebody else on.
He was my first captain as well in the seconds. And again, you know, I love Rusty to bits. I've said this to him a million times, but when I made my debut as a kid in second 11, I can't remember exactly how old I was, either 14 or 15, in a men's team, I was absolutely petrified of Rusty, scared to death. In field, you know, just his mannerisms. There was none of this like mollycoddling young kids like there is now.
No.
You went into a men's team and you just got treated like one at the rest of them. And if you were moving you field, they were barking orders at you. And I'd never experienced anything like that before. I was absolutely scared to death of making a mistake. But you know, you sink or swim sometimes, don't you, in them situations. But what you were saying about encouraging, The first time I ever remember batting in the second 11 was away a game away at Nelson. We were on harding to nothing. We'd lost a game chasing. We were probably about 100 short, but they needed, obviously, to get the last wicket to get the extra points. And I'm batting with Keith with about 3 overs to go, meaning we're 10 and 11. And we finished not out. And he meant walking off the field, finishing not out, just to stop them getting the bowling points. It made me feel like I'd done something remarkable.
Yeah.
And we got beat by 100 runs. And
Well, as daft as it sounds, Joe, it were actually, now you mentioned that, it were actually me batting that kept me in second team. But see, it sounds daft now, but it did actually keep me in second team initially in 1990, because on my debut against Aslan, we were in a similar situation. And I ended up batting with Rusty. They got 240, and I think we were 120 for 8 when I went in. And we put about 60 on me and Rusty, and I finished 25 not out. And obviously we got hammered, but Rusty were, like I say, he praised you when you praise you, and he knocked you down when you needed knocking down. And I suppose that's sign of a good captain, a good motivator. But other thing, Jez, you look at us all, sort of me again, names again, me, Matt, Ryan, Prot, all these guys, and again there were others. That first team in the 90s who'd all come through Rusty. What we say what Stan does now is remarkable, but you look at that team, and it used to finish fourth mid 90s. We used to finish fourth, fifth, sixth every year.
Yeah.
And Rusty brought a lot of that team through. A lot of us have come through Rusty into that team.
Yeah.
So he did a great job under the circumstances. It don't go underestimated by us who went through it, but it sort of forgot. I do think things like that I forgot about now.
Yeah.
Stan's right. We weren't a bad team. We were very, very competitive. And you look at some of the pros we played against, and some of the money clubs were spending then compared to us. It was a fair achievement, and everyone contributed, especially when Flegs were pro. The workload was shared 19 quite well. And,
we mentioned when I think the first time Stan was on, and I think that was a bit of a turning point of going from 40s, 50s, 60s, early 70s, where it really was a social club that people went and played cricket and wasn't involved with the social club. And then, there were such a great job Lofty did, bringing in the likes of Rusty and Tom Sullivan and Keeley and all these, getting through the late 70s, through the 80s. All of a sudden, cricket became a better standard at the club. But then late 80s, we started to amalgamate the cricket and the social side and I'm not saying professionalism, but, we took it a little bit more serious, got backing from the committee, and I think that took us on to the 90s. And like you said, we got some pros then. Again, Ken Smalley, a great job handing that over to David Wren and getting some pros that wanted to come in, change the club, change the outlook of the players, and Stan accepted that. He talked about the Cameron Williamson season. Now, so you're right, Stan, people like Rusty and others really go unnoticed to what went on at that period.
Yeah. I mean, that second team, as we were bringing us Fury, it got us to a stage where we used to win more than what we lost,
Yeah.
And Rusty, it was a big contributor to it, when he didn't have to go and make tea. When he could open batting, he used to get some runs, did Rusty. Another one with Rusty, and it's just come to me now, but he mentions it to me virtually every time he sees me. 1992, I think, just beyond verge at first team, it was sort of, I was close. At the end of that season, I had 49 wickets in second team.
Right.
It was last ball of the season at Church away, the very last ball of the season in September. I bowled at Church's number 11. The game was won. I bowled at Church number 11. Last ball, nicks it to Rusty, and he dropped it. And it was an absolute sitter. Honestly, an absolute sitter. But you know what Rusty's like. He obviously had him on him that day. So I was walking off, and I was disappointed. An 18-year-old could have got 50 wickets. It would have been something to talk about. And I was a bit down in dumps about it, but it sounds a bit selfish. All of a sudden, push at specs up nose like he does. Listen, you. Well, here we go. He said, if you hadn't to drop that catch at Bake-Up in May, that wouldn't have mattered. Well, fucking nearly took my fucking head off, Rusty. But that, that's where we're like. It didn't let you get ahead of yourself, did Rusty? And rightly so, I
mean, Keith's still like that now. As I say, out of lockdown, after every game, I'd go and see him on the Monday morning, and we'd have a chat about what happened in the game, what we thought we could have done better, what we did well. And I think Keith's presence and his knowledge, and also just how he talks to people and gets his points across, it can be really underestimated sometimes. And he's a really, really valuable member of the club. And I'm really proud to call him a friend, especially with everything that he's done.
So come and join us. Stand west in tight hands. Worsley Club still gleaming. Years without a cup. Never stopped us dreaming.
Welcome to Stories with Stan.
East Lancs away. Match abandoned due to a cloudburst 5 minutes before the game was due to start, and after East Lancs had spent 55 minutes mopping up in their designer mopping up gear. Pity. Still, they probably don't get their hands dirty during the week, so the experience will do them good. The one thing I've noticed after 24 years at Lowerhouse was the general, in fact almost overwhelming lack of dress sense and quality attire in the team. The example was set by skipper Jez Hope, who must have a denim farm somewhere. Usually it's his Roy Rogers denim jacket or his Shaking Stevens all denim outfit. Today he had a pair of mechanics Wranglers on, complete with engine oil. Blair's was a traditional furry bright cerise zip-up catsuit top. Gary Morehouse had a dour brown, dark brown and bottle green blouse-type shirt, complete with black jeans. It was the perfect outfit to commit suicide in. The rest of the team were attired in jeans and T-shirts, with Matt Hope adding a final touch with a big rip across the knee. It was left to the two veterans in the team to try and address the decline. I had on my blue blazer, elegant grey slacks, a die-catching tie, surplus CID gear, if the truth be known. And the veteran-looking Chris Scott had on a blue suit. It was a good effort, but it had D-Mob written all over it. The professional did not look any better. Casual sweatshirt, casual and sweaty tracksuit bottoms. Even allowing for the fact that he's Australian and has probably never had to dress up in his life, this was a bit much. To pass the time, whilst watching the rain, I occupied myself by reading the Sunday People Lonely Hearts and Problem Letters page. One problem letter began, I have nothing to live for, I want to die. The reply began, if you want a Lowerhouse member, make yourself one, and if you are already a Lowerhouse member, no one. On the Lonely Hearts page, a number of letters seemed to be from the veteran divorcees from Salford or Bolton. I began to be convinced that Chris Scott was writing to the paper. This appeared to be confirmed when, comma omitted, the following appeared. Male white, single brown, hair, 6 foot tall. It had to be Chris Scott. The only question remained, which side did he part that single brown hair? So game abandoned, Lawrence Scruffs and rat bags returned to the West End. A flea ringing in their ears from me about dress sense. At the West End, the game of Don reared its ugly head. Ever loyal Bromley decided I was an obvious bad bet after last week, so he partnered Chris Scott and I partnered Peter Gablade. Peter Gaynor, if rightly known. During the course of the game, it became obvious that the circulation problems that Chris Scott has had in his hands for a number of years had not desisted. He was known throughout the game as Edward Purple Hands. Sadly, the game was steeped in controversy. I scored and struggled to come to terms with the scoreboard. After I marked the wrong scores, we were declared winners in the first game. Rusty and Jez Hope were our next opponents, and again, after further problems with my scoring, we were declared winners after 2 recounts. Words such as cheat and rogue were uttered. Rusty took over the scoring. Having led an exemplary life for 35 years, the allegations of cheating and the removal of scoring caused me some anguish. Fortunately, by dealing off the bottom of the pack and me mowing to Peter Gaynor, we managed to manipulate the game in our favour.
So I'm glad that I didn't know a lot of those stories, so it's really nice to listen to.
Well, I mean, just finish on Rusty and best one ever. And again, some of these things, they sound mad now where you play the game now, but they were quite normal. And again, Jez will back me up with this, but everything at Lowerhouse in them days had a lifespan. I mean, seriously, they used to get the cocktail Chevys out of ladies' glasses if they hadn't been damaged, and they used to use them again. Seriously, they used to use cocktail Chevys again. It was unbelievable. And everything had a lifespan, especially cricket balls, right? So, and lifespan of a ball used to be first team match ball, first team spare, second team match ball, second team spare. And like you wherever you be playing, you come back and you pick first team scorebook up, and it'd say like Jezzo 246 off 23, and you think fucking hell, next week's match ball's not going to be that much cop. But they used to give it to Rusty. Rusty take it home, get all concrete and glass out of it, give it a polish, and then we'd use it week after. Playing, we have a double header. I'll never forget it. We're playing Accrington at home, and then Tomlin away on the Sunday. Playing against Accrington, we got a reasonable score. And Neil McSweeney were balling from Parkend, and he were balling at a guy called Mark Domain, a big guy who used to play for Accrington. Good second team player, good solid second team player. And me and Prop were fielding it long on and long off. Neil McSweeney balls this ball, and Mark Domain launches it into bushes for 6. So next ball, umpire gives Neil spare. Next ball, same shot but further into bushes. So Rusty shouts, "You two, go and look for them balls." So Prop says, "Rusty, we'll only have 9 men." Rusty said, "Don't matter. I'll worry about that. You two go and find them." But it used to be quite normal that in second team. You'd play with 10 while someone looked for the ball, but he sent me and Prop. So we climbs into the park and we're rummaging around bushes looking for balls. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, Neil McSweeney climbs up. It's true, is it? Neil McSweeney climbs over the wall and he says, "Stanley, Rusty's taking me off. He's putting you on at Parkend." So, all right. He says, "I have to stay here and help him look for these balls." So Proc and Neil carry on looking for balls. I climb back into the ground, walk back onto the pitch, mark me run up. So I'm at the end of my run up and I'm thinking, it's a tough gig this. I've got 6 fielders, a keeper. It's me and Rusty. So we'd like 9 men. Proc and Neil still nowhere to be seen. All of a sudden, Rusty's walking towards me, marching towards me with his tank top on. And he says to me, and he has the second spare in his hand. He like stands in front of me, pushes his glasses up his nose again, and he puts the second spare in my hand, but he keeps hold of it. So now we've both got hold of this match ball, and he says to me, "Listen, you," he says, you better not lose this match ball because it's the only one I've got left." He said, "In fact, if you do lose it, we won't be going to fucking Todmorden tomorrow." And he walked off and left me to it.
So, Stanley, obviously, as you said, you nearly took 50 wickets in the second team and then broke into the first team. Do you remember your debut? Or?
Well, I can. I mean, I always felt in 1992 I should have been given my chance then. But, Neil McSweeney got picked before me for a couple of games by Jez. And then I thought, 1993, they looked like there were a place available, but Jez rooted round Burnley Cop Shop till he come up with a guy called Paul Webb. So I got pushed back again. And this Paul Webb came off shop floor at police station and played a few games. But then eventually, Jez rang me up and said, "You're in at East Lancs." And I remember debut at East Lancs. It went all right. I don't think there were any wickets or anything, but I think I bowled about 4 overs for 15, bowling at like Dave Pearson and that, which was just a different level to what I've been bowling at. Miles different. Pro and Dave Pearson compared to second teamers. So that was my debut. And then I sat out again a bit then because everyone were back. Paul Webb, who actually, he was a good cricketer with Paul Webb, to be fair, but he just wasn't available very often. And he would becoming less and less available. And all of a sudden, he missed one Saturday at Haslingden. They gave me a game and I got 3 wickets. And I sort of settled into the first team from there then.
Remember who them 3 wickets were, Paul?
Phil Simmons was definitely one of them, my first one. Yeah. Blaise, good catch by Blaise. Scotty stumped someone.
Mike Ingham.
Yeah, right. I'm going to say Graham Knowles, but Mark Ingham, yeah.
And Patrick Lord, what the one?
Patrick Lord, right, yeah.
So not 3 bad ones there, are they? Especially Simmons and Ingham.
Yeah, it actually, I mean, you don't like blowing your own trumpet, but the day after was my real moment for me, because the day after we played Nelson home and I got 5 through in a collection very next day.
And you had some prize scouts in there as well.
18 then. No, 19, yeah, 19.
So on that day, Stanley, you got Carrots out, Paul Garrity, Marcus Phelan, to name a couple of those wickets. And at that, yeah. So at that point, you were obviously starting to become established in the first team. Do you have any, as that sort of progressed through and you made your way through the 90s, is there any notable performances or moments that you think are important to discuss? Or
I mean, the personal moments. You always remember your best display. I can remember bowling Rottenstall out at Lowerhouse, but sometimes you can get 5 or 6 wickets and not bowl so well. But that day, not only did everything come out right and feel right, the figures matched it as well. And it were the best I've ever bowled that day. Whether conditions, obviously it's a conditions game into bowling, and but that one sticks in mind.
What about this theory about you and Roger Harper?
I mean, the ball that got him out at Lowerhouse was. It's Nigel Stockley still has it down as caught and bowled on Lancashire League website, which is a bit disappointing, really, because I mean, it pitched on his leg stump and took his off bail off. It was just, got to be honest, I didn't do it on purpose because I don't think I could do it on purpose, but it just, everything went right, everything come out right, and it just did him. People from Bacup who I got on with, Dave Thompson, Pete Thompson, will talk about it, and I got him out again a few weeks later, clean bowl. They just played all round one, but Peter Thompson always says to me, said it with the ball, or at the time, Pete Thompson said it with the ball the week before that got him out the second time. And it were only a couple of weeks after he'd demolished Alan Donald as well with that.
Excellent.
But I did all right against him most times, really. I don't think he ever took me apart. I did well against a few of them. Don't want to come across as big-headed because my overall stats won't suggest I was a great bowler, but I have a decent record against Simmons. I had a decent record against Scuderi. I seem to get pros out and get smashed all over that shit, to be honest. Truth be known.
What was it like playing in the 90s, Stanley? Because there's lots of stories about how Lowerhouse weren't a great team, but over these past few weeks we've sort of established that through part of the 80s and then going into the 90s, the Lowerhouse team were progressing quite well. So
from 95 through to 99, so you've 2 years with Fleggs, a year with Curry, a year with Yava, and a year with Motti where rules weren't brilliant, and the way we played, it didn't really suit us. If you look at that year, we didn't have a great year, but we drew a lot of games.
Yeah, they played time cricket, didn't they?
Yeah, we drew a lot of games. We didn't lose many, but we just struggled. We just didn't have the sort of players you needed to win in that format, really. We were a decent season. We didn't embarrass ourselves by any stretch. But yeah, I mean, that side from 95 to 90, it was a good side. We're well balanced. We had a great captain, and Fleggs were top pro as well. Him and Gary got it going. They were brilliant at sharing the workload, making you feel important.
How would you think Fleggs would fit in today's setup? How do you think he'd get on?
Well, it'd be brilliant because he's, I think he admitted his solid, the level he was at, first class level. He needed to grab it. He needed to get everything out of himself to compete at that level. But he brought that attitude to our level. Now, obviously, we're a step above at our level. So his enthusiasm, his fielding was just something else. His fielding was absolutely amazing, but then he just got everything out of every ounce of ability he had, which for a guy before him, Craig Light, who almost looked like watching a Test match batsman, but just didn't seem to have the energy or the character,
the drive,
the drive to achieve to try and get to the top, where you could never accuse Fleggs of that.
Joe or Duke, I'll just give you a bit of about Fleggs. I mean, Joe Martin, you won't remember him, will you? At all? He was 5'4", real fit athlete, and an ounce of fat on him. Trained hard in his own time, got the best out of other people who wanted to work with him. He wasn't a preacher. He was quite a quiet lad. When you ask how he would go on now, and I know it's a different era, and Stan goes on about the different eras, but no one would ever feel down when he was in the team. He was always, little things. You'll remember this, Stanley. I was bowling a lot then. Stanley was bowling, all the bowls. He would run to the bowler at the beginning of every over and take your jumper and cap to the umpire.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Where he was fielding, he would give you some words of encouragement. you know, you're bowling great there, keep that going, or look, there's a bit of a weakness there, and really get that a little bit before it was fashionable to go and tap it hands every time someone kills it. He did that every ball or every over.
If you're ever struggling, you needed any help, and you could say get down to the club on Tuesday morning, he'd be there. You know, he'll bat and you bowl at him, or he'd bowl at you bat. And he did it for all of us, you know.
Yeah. Chaps, I'm not saying it's right, but he'd do his own little bit of research or working at opposition pros. He felt inferior to opposition pros at times, certainly big names. So he would do his research, work out how he's going to bat against them, work out how he's going to bowl. Because he used to bowl left-arm Chinaman a lot of the time and left-arm leg spin, and it didn't always come out right, but when it did, and he would do all his homework. And if he felt that he'd done something, you know, he'd made a mistake, certainly when he was batting, I'm not lying here, am I, Stanley? No. He would go to the dressing room and he would literally smash his bat all over the floor.
Yeah.
He'd have to leave the dressing room. If you knew that he'd dropped a bollock, you know, and his own fault, they hadn't got him out, he would come in, he went through so many bats, it was untrue.
Yeah.
You know,
he used to lose his rag, yeah.
Yeah, and that wasn't just because he was, you know, trying to impress us. That's because he cared, and he wanted us to improve, and he wanted the club to improve. So yeah, there were good times, some good players, but you know.
I mean, we beat with Flegs as pro. We beat Bacup, you know, at Bacup with, we kept him to a low score. It was actually the game where I got Harper out at Bacup, but they got a reasonable score. I mean, when Roger Harper bowled, if you'd 130 on board, you'd have a chance. And Flegs just kept running down wicket at him, but never once played an attacking shot. Just kept running down wicket to him and hitting him for one. You know, knew he couldn't get stumped, and just used his feet. It was sort of a little bit. I'd never seen anything like it. You know, playing at Lowerhouse at that point, just like how to play him, and it just milked him and finished 16 or out, and we won. I think we won with 2 wickets down, something like that, against Roger Harper. You know, get some stick to Stan, but. I mean, I was a bit of an ally, Stan, at times. And obviously, because of where we field, if he were at third man, I'd be at fine leg, long on, long off. And we had this little subconscious, we had this little game where we used to like make each other laugh. You know, we used to try and make each other giggle or laugh. And, you know, if someone hit a tower in 6 and we're at long on, long off, one of us would shout mine, things like that. And I mean, probably undermining him a bit, but him and Gary didn't quite see eye to eye. He used to whine Gary. He used to go down to third man with fielding helmet on. And if Gary shouted at him, he'd say, I'm saving us 5 runs, Skip. I'm just doing it to save 5 runs. And, you know, and it used to make me laugh, but sometimes you weren't supposed to be laughing, you know what I mean?
Honestly, can you imagine his reaction now if someone did that in a pristine game or a game at any level? He's so apoplectic.
I would just that Gooch, and I remember Stanley and Stan, the jokes, and Gary had split them up almost. It'd be a case of moving them around the field, and it wasn't as if.
Brock used to be on it as well. We used to try and make each other giggle, you know, but.
Yeah, and I was on Gary's side in trying to get it a little bit more, you know, professional, and then Stan would encourage. You imagine Stanley and Proc didn't need a lot of encouraging. When Stan had a bit of a bee in his bonnet about something, he would start making the others laugh, and it wasn't as if. Because I don't think I'm talking out of school here, Stan. But between you and Stan, there'd be the odd occasion where the ball would trickle down to third man or long leg and would find its way in the boundary.
So come and join us, Stan West in tight hands. Worsley Club still gleaming, years without a club, never stopped us dreaming.
Welcome to Stories with Stan.
Once again, we assembled at Alexandra Meadows, and once again, with the exception of Chris Scott and myself, the rest of the team turned up dressed like the survivors of a nuclear holocaust. Still, at least the skipper was dressing smartly in his D-mob suit. The skipper on this occasion was the veteran-looking Chris Scott. Our regular skipper was working either for the police or on his denim farm. Chris took his role seriously, as one might expect. He instructed everyone that we had to refer to him as skipper, and that any references to him as Baldy, as usually happens, will be dealt with by the committee. He started off well, defending his 100% record of victories as standing skipper. He decided that he needed experience near him in the slips, rather than the usual belching and grunting from Matt Hope. Matt dropped down to third man, and I came into the slips as the senior man. I've always been conscious as a former captain of being too willing to give advice, and so in an attempt to avoid pestering the skipper, I bit my tongue for the first 10. Just as well, really, because as my first foray into the world of suggestion, I simply said to him, Chris, could I just suggest something? He turned round and said, shut your mouth, fuck off, go down to third man. I wasn't happy with this, as you can imagine. I approached him after the end of the over and said, what was all that about? He completely ignored me, repeated his message of how to leave, and off I went to third man to speak to a number of spectators for the rest of the game.
So, Stanny, you played 134 games in the first team, and then you moved on to a new role of second team captain. If you just want to briefly explain how that came about, and then...
Well, I mean, the club at the time, there were issues away from cricket and people were leaving for certain reasons, you know, and there were a bit of a fallout. Me personally, Stan and Jez asked me to go down to the club one Saturday morning. So I went from work and they said the situation is this. And we didn't actually, at the time, if Jez remembers right, we didn't actually have anybody who wanted to be first team captain, let alone second team captain.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they were honest with me that, you know, they said you could have been the first team captain, but obviously things haven't gone as I'd wanted them to with my bowling. You know, I'd trouble with my action and things like that, and I just was nowhere near the player. Or whether a few aborted attempts at comebacks, you know, Matt tried to persevere with me for a few games, you know, but it had gone, you know, it had completely gone, and I broke my wrist at Rishton in one of the aborted comebacks and things.
I remember that game.
So it just weren't there anymore. So they needed a second team captain. So Stan said, how do you feel about doing that? So I said, let's give it a go. It weren't something I'd really thought of at that time, you know. It was a funny time for me because I weren't thinking, well, I thought there's no chance we're going to get back in first team because I can't. It's just not there. And I played in seconds. I can't remember who was captain, to be honest. I played in seconds for most of the team. It might have been Pete Gaynor. And I got away with my batting, funnily enough, in second team. You know, I was getting a couple of 30s, a couple of 40s. So, I mean, you'd have probably been playing in second team then, Joe. You know, when I started playing in 2000, I weren't doing a great deal of bowling even in second team. But then they suggested this captaincy thing. So you give it on, and it was hard work because we didn't have any players. You know, I mean, first team was struggling for players. So what was the second team going to be like? I mean, you were turning up, and there were people you didn't know, and you know, with the West Indian guy, Greg Brown, who turned round, swung at a ball so hard he turned round and hit wicketkeeper on head against Ramsbottom. That's the levels we've dropped to. You know, that were the sort of player we were attracting. So I'll be honest with you, it weren't much fun captaining at that point. Then I probably captained 2002. Then I left halfway through 2003 for personal reasons, and I didn't play again actually till 2006. Frank Ente he would either retiring or I think they needed him in the night at first team. So Frank said, well, I'll step down at second team captain. So I just rang Stan up. I'd settled down with Sharon then at this point. I rang Stan. I said, I'll give it another go if you want, Stan. We did, and Stan said, yeah, let's go for it. So I went from not playing at all to captain at second team again in 2006. And that weren't as bad because with a few young players coming through then, and the 2017 sort of Paddy, Joe Hawke, you know, we finished Phil Edmondson, you know, Swifty never let you down in second team, you know, Matthew and people like that. So we were a decent side in 2007. Obviously Ben was sort of as one of his probably his best batter then, and it was a good team.
You mentioned your brother there. How did you get on captaining your brother?
We had a few. We had words at times, you know. It's hard work. It were hard work. It were hard work captaining Matthew because they know. I mean, Jez should know more than anyone. He's captained both his brothers, and they've captained him. And I don't know. It's hard to say because I had to drop him half the time because he was useless.
He's MD now, though, Stan.
MD.
He is. He's,
He might veto this podcast if we play him off too
Yeah,
much,
he's
although he
Mr.
does seem to
Big
get
Time,
mentioned every single week.
So Paul, as you mentioned, 2006, 2007, we started to get a lot of players off Stan's production line coming through and started to get some good teams. As you said, you finished second. I think there was a cup semi-final in there as well.
There were a few cup semi-finals. Yeah, we did that a few times. Yeah. You should always mention that. I mean, I mentioned some of the players there, but right through that, I mean, good mate of mine now. But Aggers was sort of consistent in that team through that period, and he was consistent as well. Probably by his own admission, not quite good enough at first team, but he'd always get you 4 or 5 scores a season with Aggers, And it so, like I say, when I come back 2006, that was a lot better team. And the 2008, 2009, I think as second team captain, I mean, we had the runners-up seasons, but the season I enjoyed the most was actually my last. I think when we had yourself, Johnny Whitehead, Fergus, Matt Walker, and all you guys were coming through, and we were playing, and you could see you were all going to be really good players. We're turning up. You're all proper kids then, most of you. But we're turning up and hammering teams, and basically a team of under 15s. I think we finished about 4th in league.
Yeah.
We were like me and a team of under 15s, but we were playing proper cricket and hammering teams, and that were good fun. Jack Edgar were playing at 13 and getting 30s and 40s, and really, really good. That were a good time. That, but I just couldn't. And Aggers played in that team.
Yeah,
you just couldn't. I just couldn't carry on. My left heel was just absolutely shot at, and I just couldn't. All I was doing, my captain, and I sort of felt I was taking the place up. Really, I couldn't even bat in seconds. Then I couldn't bowl, and I think I bowled away twice all season, if that. So it just got a bit too much. And what actually did finish it for me was captain in seconds. Was we played at Colne, one of the games I had to bowl. And,
I remember.
I bowled about 14 overs and I couldn't get out of bed the day after. I mean, that much agony with my left heel. So,
well, that game, Stanley, that game, Colne got 250.
Yeah.
All out of 42 overs.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah.
And you had to bowl. But I'm glad you mentioned that season, Stanley, because the first game we played, I'd played 3 or 4 games the previous year. But that first game that we played, we'd practiced in the nets before we started, and we'd had a team talk, and we were playing Bay Cup. Now Bay Cup had Chappie playing, and Terry Lord and Peter Felson were playing.
Yeah, we murdered them. Yeah.
And we properly battered them. I managed to get 95 that day.
I wonder why you brought it up.
But there were some amazing performances that year. I'm sure Johnny got a century, and Ferg Bailey got a century as well.
Yeah.
But that game against Bay Cup, Aggers were run out first ball.
They did.
He were running with me. Call for a 3.
That started off my superstition, and not watching the game until we scored a run.
Yeah. 8-1, 3 mid wicket. 3. So look, I think it's only a short boundary that Aggers. It must have been short by about 10 yards.
Did he shout 3 when he hit it?
No, 2.
He might have. I can't remember.
Say, that's village.
What happened where I was stood in the dressing room and Aggers hit it through mid wicket, and I said, "There we are, we're away for the season." And no sooner had the words left my mouth, Aggers turned round and got run out by half the pitch. And from that moment on, I had a superstition, which actually served us well, where I didn't watch us bat until we'd scored a run, and not lost a wicket. So,
but that team was the making of the next period of success in the next sort of 10 years.
I'll just give you a few names from second 11 for that year that you didn't mention. Fergus, Matt Walker, Matt Marquis. Very, very useful cricketer at that level. Yeah. Mickey Lee, he used to get a lot of second team wickets, didn't he?
Mickey Lee took a 6er in the first game, and I think in the first half of the season he took 30 odd wickets, maybe more. And I think he ended with 40 odd wickets. Absolutely brilliant.
Scott Hope, Matt Doughty, good players.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're a good team.
Thanks for that, Stanny. I think that's a really good place to finish, actually, because then you start...
no.
Oh, is it not? Oh, sorry. Carry on then.
What about him when he got... What about when he got picked
I know Joe wants me to tell a tale here, don't you, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
What about when you came back to play a couple of T20 games?
Well,
What do you remember about that?
Like I say, there were a couple of aborted attempts at comebacks. And actually, 2007 went second team, finished runners-up. I did bowl probably a bit more that season. We were short on a Friday night for a 2020 game. So Stan rang me up and said, Finch, you need someone to go over to Tomberton and play for first team. How do you fancy it? I said, well, I'll go, no one else. So I turns up and we were batting and we got a good score. Now, just a bit of perspective here. My first ever wicket in Lancashire as a Lancashire League first teamer was Phil Simmons. My last ever wicket as a Lancashire League first teamer was Faf Du Plessis. What's he called him? Du Plessis. Yeah. So my last ever
It's good,
wicket
that, Paul. It's good,
was
that.
Faf Du Plessis. There's not many people can have that on the CV.
No, it's very good, that, Paul.
What happened in between? Not quite as, and it sort of went something like this, really. I bowled at Du Plessis, he hit me for 2. And then next ball, he skied one to mid-off, and Finch caught it, but he crossed. We were batting with a guy called Simon Newbit. So Newbit's facing. First ball I bowled at Newbit, he has a wild slash at it, and he hits it towards point, right down Scott Hope's throat. I mean, right down. Scott's at least 2 yards off boundary edge. All of a sudden, I'm thinking I've got 2 wickets in 2 balls here. Next thing, it's gone for 6. And you can't work out I still to this day cannot work out what Scott did. So third ball, I bowls again. He hits that for 6. That was a bit of a cleaner hit. That landed in bandstand at Centreville Park. So with 4 balls in, I bowls the 5th ball at him. Now, one of my best friends in the world, possibly celebrated as one of the greatest fielders the club's ever had. Just to his left, so it's a definite single. Charlie Cotton completely misses it, so they come back for a second. So Newbit's still on strike. The last ball of the over, he has an almighty swing, and it flies off to leg side, and it's going right down Phil Edmondson's throat. Phil Edmondson were playing that night, and Phil Edmondson did exactly the same as Scott Hope. I thought he's caught it, it's gone for 6, and Phil Edmondson dropped it for 6. So it's same over. I had 2 catches dropped for 6, been smashed for 6, and got Faf Du Plessis out. So I thought, well, Finch is going to take me off now, so we're out. Now,
that's my work done for the evening.
Yeah, fair play to Fincher. He came up to me and he says, look, he said, no, you've been hit for 3 sixes, but you should have had him out twice there. How do you fancy it? Have another? That's not fair enough, it's up to you. So first ball at next over, he absolutely skies it. And I mean, it would orbit, but it's going to Ben Heap. I thought, there's a chance here now. But it went that high, they ran 3. But Ben dropped it. So now we're 1 for 25 off 7 balls. The 4th ball of the over, the second ball of the over. This is absolutely true. I bowled at the other batter, and it hit him on the pad and went past Jack McGregor. It was a definite 2. All of a sudden, Jack McGregor tears after it, keeps it at 1, so Newbit's back on strike. And I'm thinking to myself, is he fucking mad? Why didn't he play him up 2? As I look round, Mick Bibby's signalled it as a wide. So there's still 5 balls left. The next 4, he hit me for 3 sixes and a 4. But my last ever ball as a first team cricketer with a dot ball. And I finished with 1 for 49 off 2 overs with 3 drop catches. But then, and nobody knows this, on the Saturday, we played Haslingden in second team. And a great player, I thought he was a real class act, a guy called Stuart Taylor playing for Haslingden in seconds. And I was talking to him before the game, Stuart Taylor, and he said, I'm absolutely knackered, Stan. He said, I shouldn't be playing. He said, I'm injured. He said, but I should really be sitting out. He said, I'll have a bat, I'll do what I can. So that day, first ball, I bowled at Stuart Taylor. He edged it, Paddy Howley dropped it. Second ball was a dot ball. The third ball, he hit it up in air. It landed Paddy and Max Owls watched it land between the cells, just stood and watched it land there. And what I hadn't said is Stan had put the wicket about 50. We were playing an under 13 wicket near Grimesman's Hut. Stuart Taylor hit the next 3 balls for 6. So in 3 overs, I've been hit for 9 sixes, had 5 catches dropped, and got South African's future captain out in 3 overs.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that just snapshots your career nicely. That done it, Paul.
Yeah, and that's when my first team career ended that day.
You'd struggled.
Although I subfielded against Bay Cup and they ran a 4 to me. Can you remember that?
Oh, fantastic,
Excellent.
Stanley.
Very good. Very good.
Oh, really good. Now, I think that's a good place to end. We'll get you on again, Stanley, to discuss your next role, which was first team manager, and all the success in those 8 years or however long it was. I can't remember now that we won that much. Hopefully, we'll get you on again. Thank you for coming on. Just a mention as well to our Housecast sponsor, Johnny Russell from the Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, who sponsors the podcast. We really appreciate his support. So you can get all your pies and everything else from him. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening again.